Alrighty, take 47. I'm Kevin Stump. This is my intro to my book for the NJC Theater Project Spring 2021. I would like to thank Mary Carlstead and Brendan Carroll, the students that got me involved, and I would also like to thank Nathan Robinson for putting this all together. I'm sure it's going to be a pain in the butt. So anyway, my book is called Homer Price by Robert McCloskey, originally written in the 40s. This is a really cool book that is probably the book I learned how to read out of by sitting next to my older brother while it was read to him. And it's probably not so much stories that got me excited, but hey, getting a story read to you, but it's the illustrations. Very well done, and almost every story, this is 6 or 7 stories, has some kind of cool mechanical thing. So there's the inside of the donut machine. So, I don't know, everybody should have it. You can still buy a copy. This copy is brand new. It doesn't feel like it's been touched. I think published in the 70s. As a reprint, it's phenomenal. Everybody should have it. Alrighty, folks. So due to the zooming quality of the camera, we're not going to show my face because you probably don't want to see it anyway. But here we go. The reading of Homer Price by Robert McCloskey. And I should already know this, but originally published in 1943. This is a reprint, I believe, from 76. It's in perfect condition. And this is 5 or 6 stories. And I'm going to elect to read one of the stories in the middle called The Donuts. And it is the cover illustration. So really cool illustration. So we'll try to do this properly to you. So here's the introduction illustration to the story. I may flip back to this as I go. We're recording this for the first time. We don't know how it's going to go, but there we go. So the donuts. One Friday night in November, Homer overheard his mother talking on the telephone to Aunt Agnes over in Centerburg. "I'll stop by the car." I probably should start over, but I'm not going to. "I'll stop by with the car in about half an hour and we can go to the meeting together," she said, because tonight was the night the Ladies' Club was meeting to discuss plans for the box social and to knit and to sew for the Red Cross. "I think I'll come along and keep Uncle Ulysses company while you and Aunt Agnes go to the meeting," said Homer. So after Homer had combed his hair and his mother had looked to see if she had her knitting instructions and the right size needles, they started for town. Homer's Uncle Ulysses and Aunt Agnes have a very up-and-coming lunchroom over in Centerburg, just across from the courthouse on the town square. Uncle Ulysses is a man with advanced ideas and a weakness for labor-saving devices. He equipped the lunchroom with automatic toasters, automatic coffee maker, automatic dishwasher, and an automatic donut maker. All just the latest things in labor-saving devices. Aunt Agnes would throw up her hands and sigh every time Uncle Ulysses bought a new labor-saving device. Sometimes she became unkindly disposed toward him for days and days. She was of the opinion that Uncle Ulysses was just frittered his time away over at the barbershop with the sheriff and the boys. So, what was the good of a labor-saving device that gave you more time to fritter? When Homer and his mother got to Centerburg that evening, they stopped at the lunchroom, and after Aunt Agnes had come out and said, "My, how that boy does grill," which is what she always said, she went off with Homer's mother in the car. Homer went into the lunchroom and said, "Howdy, Uncle Ulysses." "Oh, hello, Homer. You're just in time," said Uncle Ulysses. "I've been going over this automatic donut machine, oiling the machinery and cleaning the works. Wonderful things, these labor-saving devices." "Yes," agreed Homer. And he picked up a cloth and started polishing the metal trimmings while Uncle Ulysses tinkered with the inside workings. "Oh," sighed Uncle Ulysses. "Look here, Homer, you've got a mechanical mind. See if you can find where these two pieces fit in. I'm going across to the barber shop for a spell, because there's something I want to talk to the sheriff about. There won't be much business here until the double feature is over at the movie house, and I'll be back before then." So then, as Uncle Ulysses went out the door, he said, "Homer, after you get the pieces in place, would you mind mixing up a batch of donut batter and putting it in the machine? You can turn the switch and make a few donuts to have on hand for the crowd after the movie, if you don't mind." And there's the illustration of Uncle Homer, Uncle Ulysses, with the donut machine taken apart. Okay, said Homer, I'll take care of everything. A few minutes later, a customer came in and said, "Good evening, bud." Homer looked up from putting the last piece in the donut machine and said, "Good evening, sir. What can I do for you?" "Well, young fella, I would like a cup of coffee and some donuts," said the customer. "I'm sorry, mister, but we don't have any donuts for about half an hour until I can mix up some dough and start this machine. I could give you some very fine sugar rolls instead." "Well, buddy, I'm in no real hurry, so I'll just have a cup of coffee and wait around a bit for the donuts. Fresh donuts are always worth waiting for." "Okay," said Homer, and he drew a cup of coffee from Uncle Ulysses' super automatic, super duper coffee maker. "It's a nice place you've got here," said the customer. "Oh, yes," said Homer. "This is very up-and-coming lunchroom with all the latest improvements." "Well, yes, indeed," said the stranger. "Must be good business." "I'm in business, too. I'm a traveling man in the outdoor advertising business. I'm a sandwich man, in fact. Mr. Gabby's my name." "My name is Homer. I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Gabby. It must be a fine profession, traveling and advertising sandwiches." "Oh, no," said Mr. Gabby. "I don't advertise sandwiches. I just wear any kind of an ad, one sign on the front and one sign on behind, and it kind of looks like it's a sandwich. You know what I mean?" "Oh, I see," said Homer. "That must be fun. And you travel too?" asked Homer as he got out the flour and the baking powder. "Oh, yes, I ride the rods between the jobs. On freight trains, you know what I mean?" "Oh, yes, I do," said Homer, "but isn't that dangerous?" "Well, of course, there's a certain amount of risk. But you take any method of travel these days, it's all dangerous, you know what I mean? Now you take these darn airplanes, for instance. Just then, a large, shiny black car stopped in front of the lunchroom, and a chauffeur helped a lady out of the rear door. They both came inside, and the lady smiled at Homer and said, "We've stopped for a light snack. Some donuts and coffee would be simply marvelous." And then Homer said, "Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, but the donuts won't be ready until I make this batter and start Uncle Ulysses' donut machine." "Well, now, aren't you the clever young man to know how to make donuts?" "Well," blushed Homer, "I've really never done it before, but I've got a recipe to follow." "Now, young man, you simply must allow me to help. You know, I haven't made donuts for years, but I know the best recipe for donuts. It's marvelous, and we really must use it." "But ma'am," said Homer. "Now, just wait until you taste my donuts," said the lady. "Do you have an apron?" So she took off her fur coat and her rings and all her jewelry and rolled up her sleeves to make donut batter. And there she is. Oops, lost the page. "Charles," she said to the chauffeur, "hand me that baking powder, and that's right, young man. We'll need some nutmeg." So Homer and the chauffeur stood by and handed things and cracked the eggs while the lady mixed and stirred. Mr. Gabby sat on his stool, sipped his coffee, and looked on with great interest. "There," said the lady, with all the ingredients were mixed. "Just wait until you taste these donuts." "Boy, it looks like an awful lot of batter," said Homer as he stood on a chair and poured it into the donut machine with the help of the chauffeur. "It's about 10 times as much as Uncle Ulysses ever makes." "Oh, but wait until you taste them," said the lady with an eager look and a smile. Homer got down from the chair and pushed the button on the machine marked "Start." Rings of batter started dropping into the hot fat. After a ring of batter was cooked on one side, an automatic gadget turned it over, and on the other side it would cook. Then another automatic gadget gave the donut a little push, and it rolled neatly down a little chute, all ready to eat. "That's simply fascinating," said the lady, as she watched the first donut roll out. "Here, young man, you must have the first one. Now, isn't that just too delicious? Isn't it simply marvelous?" "Yes, ma'am, it's very good," said Homer, as the lady also handed donuts to Charles the chauffeur and Mr. Gabby, and asked them if they didn't think they were just simply divine donuts. "It's an old family recipe," said the lady with pride. Well, Homer poured some coffee for the lady and the chauffeur and for Mr. Gabby and a glass of milk for himself, and they all sat down to the lunch counter to enjoy another few donuts apiece. "I'm so glad you enjoy my donuts," said the lady. "But now, Charles, we really must be going. If you will just take this apron, Homer, and put 24 donuts in a bag to take along, we'll be on our way. And Charles, don't forget to pay the young man." She rolled down her sleeves and put on her jewelry, and then Charles managed to get her big fur coat on. "Good night, young man. I haven't had so much fun in years. I really haven't," said the lady, and she went out the door into the big shiny car. "Those are sure good donuts," said Mr. Gabby as the car moved off. "You bet," said Homer. Then he and Mr. Gabby stood and watched the automatic donut machine make donuts. After a few dozen more donuts had rolled down the little chute, Homer said, "Well, I guess that's enough donuts to sell to the theater customers, I'd better turn the machine off for a while. So Homer pushed the button marked stop. And there was a little click, but nothing happened. And then my phone rings to interrupt the story. Hello? You guys will hear this.
If we don't hear from you today, we will assume you do not want to cover your vehicle and the warranty will be voided. Press 2 to decline coverage on your vehicle and be added to our do not call list. Press 1 to speak to a warranty.
Press 2. All right, sorry for that interruption. I will figure out how to edit that out. Hopefully. So back to the story. Homer pressed the stop button. Nothing happened. The rings of batter kept right on dropping into the hot fat, and an automatic gadget kept right on turning them over, and another automatic gadget kept right on giving them a little push, and the donuts kept right on rolling down the little chute, all ready to eat. That's funny, said Homer. I'm sure that's the right button. He pushed it again, but the automatic donut maker kept right on making donuts. Well, I guess I must have put one of those pieces in backwards, said Homer. Then it might stop if you push the button marked start, said Mr. Gabby. And Homer did, and the donut still kept rolling down the little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. I guess we could sell a few more donuts, said Homer, but I'd better telephone Uncle Ulysses over at the barber shop. So Homer gave the number to the operator. While he waited for someone to answer, he counted 37 donuts roll down the little chute. Finally, somebody answered. Hello? This is the barber shop. I mean the Sharber Bop. I mean the barber shop. Oh, hello, Sheriff. This is Homer. Could I speak to Uncle Ulysses? Well, he's playing pinochle right now, said the sheriff. Anything I can tell him? Yes, said Homer. I pushed the button marked stop on the donut machine, but the rings of batter keep right on dropping into the hot fat. And an automatic gadget keeps right on turning them over, and another automatic gadget keeps giving them a little push. And the donuts keep right on rolling down the little chute. It won't stop. Oh, okay. Hold the wire, and I'll tell him. And then Homer looked over his shoulder and counted another 21 donuts roll down the little chute, all ready to eat. And then the sheriff said, oh, he'll be right over. Just got to finish this hand. That's good, said Homer. Goodbye, Sheriff. And the window was full of donuts by now, so Homer and Mr. Gabby had to hustle around and start stacking them on plates and trays and lining them up on the counter. Sure are a lot of donuts, said Homer. You bet, said Mr. Gabby. I lost count at 1,202, and that was quite a while back. People had begun to gather outside the lunchroom window, and someone was saying, there are almost as many donuts as there are people in Centerburg, and I wonder how in tarnation Ulysses thinks he can sell all of them. Every once in a while, somebody would come inside and buy some, but while somebody bought 2 to eat and a dozen to take home, the machine made 3 dozen more, and this is one of the best pictures. There's the entire lunchroom, getting full of donuts. You got Mr. Gabby and Homer and everybody. Look at all those donuts. By the time Uncle Ulysses and the sheriff arrived and pushed through the crowd, the lunchroom was a calamity of donuts. Donuts in the window, donuts piled high on the shelf, donuts stacked on plates, donuts lined up 12 deep all along the counter, and donuts still rolling down the little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. Hello, Sheriff. Hello, Uncle Ulysses. We're having a little trouble here, said Homer. Well, I'll be damned, said Uncle Ulysses. Darn if it won't be when Aggie gets home, said the sheriff. Mighty fine donuts, though. What do you do with them all, you Uncle Ulysses? And Uncle Ulysses groaned and said, well, what will Aunt Aggie say? We'll never sell all of them. And then Mr. Gabby, who hadn't said anything for a long time, stopped piling donuts and said, what you need is an advertising man. You know what I mean? You got the donuts. You got to create a market, understand? It's balancing demand with the supply, that sort of thing. Yep, said Homer, Mr. Gabby's right. We have to enlarge our market. He's an advertising sandwich man, so we can hire him. He can walk up and down in front of the theater and get the customers. You're hired, Mr. Gabby, said Uncle Ulysses. Then everybody pitched in to paint the signs and to get Mr. Gabby sandwiched in between them. They painted "Sale on Donuts" in big letters on the window, too. Meanwhile, the rings of batter kept right on dropping into the hot fat, and an automatic gadget kept right on turning them over, and another automatic gadget kept right on giving them a little push. And the donuts kept right on rolling down the little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. Why, I certainly hope this advertising works, said Uncle Ulysses. Aggie'll certainly throw a fit if they don't. The sheriff went outside to keep order because there was quite a crowd by now, all looking at the donuts and guessing how many thousands there were and watching new ones roll down the little chute just as regular as a clock can tick. Homer and Uncle Ulysses kept stacking donuts. Once in a while somebody bought a few, but not very often. And then Mr. Gabby came back and said, "Say, you know there's not much use in me advertising at the theater. The show's all over, and besides, almost everybody in town is in front watching that machine make donuts." "Zeus," said Uncle Ulysses, "we must get rid of these donuts before Agnes gets here." "Looks like you'll have to hire a truck to haul them away," said the sheriff who had just come in. But just then there was a noise and shoving out front, and a lady from the shiny black car and her chauffeur came pushing through the crowd and into the lunchroom. And there's a picture of the rich lady and the chauffeur pushing into the lunchroom. "Oh, gracious," she gasped, ignoring the donuts. "I've lost my diamond bracelet, and I just know I left it here on the counter," she said, pointing to a place where the donuts were piled in stacks of 2 dozen. "Yes, ma'am, I guess you forgot it when you helped make the batter," said Homer. Then they all moved the donuts around and looked for the diamond bracelet, and they couldn't find it anywhere. Meanwhile, the donuts kept rolling down the little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. After they had looked all around, the sheriff cast a suspicious eye on Mr. Gabby, but Homer said, "He's all right, Sheriff. He didn't take it. He's a friend of mine." Then the lady said, "I'll offer a reward of $100 for that bracelet. It really must be found. It just must." "But don't you worry, lady," said the sheriff. "I'll get your bracelet back." "Zeus, this is terrible," said Uncle Ulysses. "First of all, these donuts, and then on top of all of that, a lost diamond bracelet." Mr. Gabby tried to comfort him. He said, "There's always a bright side. That machine will probably run out of batter in an hour or two." If Mr. Gabby hadn't been quick on his feet, Uncle Ulysses would have knocked him down, sure as fate. Then one of the lady wrung her hands and said, "We must find it. We just must." And Uncle Ulysses was moaning about Aunt Agnes would say, and the sheriff was eyeing Mr. Gabby. Homer sat down and thought hard. And before 20 more donuts could roll down the little chute, he said, "Say, I know where the bracelet is. It was lying there on the counter and got mixed up with the batter by mistake. The bracelet is cooked inside one of these donuts." "Why, I really believe you're right," said the lady. "Isn't that amazing? It's just simply amazing." "I'll be darned," said the sheriff. "Oh," moaned Uncle Ulysses, "now we have to break up all these donuts to find it. And think of the pieces, think of the crumbs. What will Agnes say?" "Nope," said Homer. "We don't have to break them up. I've got a plan." So Homer and the advertising man took some cardboard and some paint and printed another sign. They put the sign in the window, and the sandwich man wore 2 more signs that said the same thing and walked around in the crowd out front. And here's a picture of the sign. You guys probably can't read that, but let's get closer. There we go. And now I can't read it because it's backwards, but here we go. "Fresh donuts, 2 for 5 cents while they last. $100 prize for finding a bracelet inside a donut. P.S. You have to give the bracelet back." And boy, once that sign went up, then the donuts began to sell. Everybody wanted to buy donuts. Dozens of donuts. And that's not all. Everybody bought coffee to dunk the donuts into, and those that didn't buy coffee bought milk or soda. And it kept Homer and the lady and the chauffeur and Uncle Ulysses and the sheriff busy waiting on people who wanted to buy donuts. When all but the last couple of 100 donuts had been sold, Rupert Black shouted, "I got it!" And sure enough, there was the diamond bracelet inside of his donut. Then Rupert went home with $100. The citizens of Centerburg went home full of donuts, and the lady and her chauffeur drove off with the diamond bracelet. And Homer went home with his mother when she stopped by with Aunt Agnes. Oh, sorry. And there's Rupert getting the donut that has the bracelet in it. Woohoo, he gets $100. So as Homer went out the door, he heard Mr. Gabby say, "Neatest trick of merchandising I ever seen." And Aunt Aggie was looking skeptical while Uncle Ulysses was saying, "The rings of batter kept right on dropping into the hot fat, and the automatic gadget kept right on turning them over. And the other automatic gadget kept right on giving them a little push, and the donuts kept right on rolling down the little chute just as regular as a clock can tick. And they just kept right on a-coming and a-coming and a-coming." And that's the end of the donut story. Thank you for listening. And once again, thank you to Mary Carlstead, Brendan Carroll, and Nathan Robinson.